This is my speech, and I'm doing it on voodoo, something that I don't know anything about personally, and I don't think anybody, including you, coach, know the real nitty-gritty about it. So I'm gonna start. When people hear the word voodoo, they automatically think evil, bad, devil, they're in harm's way, things along that line. But what they don't know is like where it originated from, and people have a problem with quickly judging somebody because their family is associated with voodoo, or they'll be like, oh, your family knows how to do voodoo, I'm scared of you, without actually knowing like where it came from, or like, is it actually something harmful, or is it just something that society has portrayed it to be? And people know that voodoo goes with like Louisiana, New Orleans, or like Haiti, being Haitian. So because a lot of people think that it's evil, they tend to push those type of people aside and be like, oh, I don't want to be friends with you because if you make me mad, you might put something on me or do voodoo on me, not knowing that it's something that isn't really that harmful. Today I will be telling you all about the true history of voodoo and the origin of it, and I will be telling you all some false facts about it and really like myths about it and the truth about voodoo. Regardless of what your opinion is on voodoo, I will be telling you the truth and the history on it and where it originated from, and like I said before, some of the myths. Okay, according to Jean-Luc Saint Marc, there has been lots of misconceptions about voodoo. It comes from television, how it's portrayed on TV, people gossiping, and yeah. So he states that the myths about voodoo didn't appear out of nowhere. They're a result of racism, colonism, and sensationalism. European colonizers and later popular media portrayed African-derived religions as dangerous or evil to justify oppression and discrimination. Hollywood movies and TV shows have played a part in this by exaggerating the truth about voodoo and, like I said earlier, making people believe that it's something evil, it's something devilish, when in reality it's not. We will now get into some of the history of voodoo and the background about it. I will now be telling you where it originated from. According to Exorcista, the roots of voodoo begin in Africa, where traditional religious beliefs centered around animistic deities and ancestral worship and the balance between the natural world and the spiritual realm. When reading about this, I knew it originated in Africa because a lot of stuff along the spiritual lines originated in Africa, but something I didn't know was that voodoo is actually a religious thing, and it connects us with our ancestors more than it puts us in harm's way or like casts a spell as if it's witchcraft or something evil, when it's not. It's actually us connecting with our ancestors, African Americans, or just Africans amongst that culture, like Haitians. They're connecting with their ancestors who paved the way for them, instead of it putting people in harm's way and wishing evil and devilish on people. An unknown fact was that during the transatlantic slave trade, enslaved Africans brought these traditions to the Caribbean and the southern United States, blending them with elements of Roman Catholicism and French cultural practices. What that means to me is basically, yes, it originated, but the slaves, especially like for African American people, that is something that helped them come together. As I stated before, help them connect with their ancestors. Now that we have discussed where it originated from, some of the history, we will discuss some of the different types of voodoo. Okay, some of the different types of voodoo that I have heard from would be like New Orleans type voodoo, like French voodoo, and Haitian voodoo. Those are some of the main types of voodoo that popped up in my research, and just some really New Orleans voodoo is the type of voodoo that I have heard of. Exorcist states that Haitian voodoo developed in Haiti, heavily influenced by Catholic church rituals and spirit possession practices, and Louisiana French voodoo flourished in New Orleans, incorporating Catholic saints, African deities, and the distinctive styles of ritual, drummers, and dance. So, what they just stated is, yes, it is voodoo, but there are different types of voodoo. The New Orleans type of voodoo is more, I want to say, African style, because you have the drummers, you have the dance, versus like Haitian voodoo is more spiritual and really in tune with the ancestors. Despite their differences, it is still voodoo, and it's not the voodoo that is putting people in harm's way that people think it is. Now that we have talked about the history of voodoo, meaning where it originated from, how it traveled throughout the world, and the different types of voodoo, we will now discuss some of the myths about voodoo. I will now tell you all about the myths about voodoo that has been made up. Okay. Jean-Luc Saint Mark says that a persistent myth about voodoo is that it's tied to evil, spells, curses, or devil worship, which I have stated before. In reality, this entirely unfounded. Voodoo practitioners do not believe in our worship the devil. In fact, the very concept of the devil, it's absent in the voodoo worldview. So as I stated before, because it was portrayed like that throughout television and just throughout the world in general, people have come to their mind that voodoo, oh devil, oh evil. In reality, it's not. It's a myth, and voodoo is actually something that is very religious. As stated before, it connects people with their ancestors. Another myth would be that voodoo is a cult. Voodoo is not a cult. Saint Mark also states that it's a synchronous religion, meaning it blends African spiritual beliefs with elements of Catholicism and indigenous practices, reflecting its rich history and cultural adaptation. In countries like Haiti, voodoo is officially recognized as a religion. Again, as I have stated, it is not evil or it is not used to put people in harm's way. It is how people connect. We have just talked about the history and the origin of it and some of the popular myths about voodoo. We will now talk about how it's transformed over the years. It has honestly transformed a lot over the years, because it went from it being something that not a lot of people know about to it being something that people are scared of, instead of people being like, oh my gosh, like this is actually your culture. It is something, a part of your culture, and people are judging people because it's their culture without even knowing the facts or the history behind it. Voodoo has brought a lot of people closer than people think, because again, it is their religion. The Voodoo Society states that today the Voodoo Society is regarded by many as the last of the old orders of authentic New Orleans voodoo, hoodoo, and occult practices in the face of New Age watering down of traditional and cultural reinvention. In today's world, lots of people focus or hear of Louisiana French voodoo and not the other kinds of voodoo. Today we discuss some information about voodoo. Voodoo, as I've said, voodoo is something not a lot of people know about, and I didn't know about it, and I hope that by me telling you all about some of the information and the history and where it originated from, that y'all take something from this about not judging people because they tell you, oh, my family does voodoo, my grandma does voodoo, and actually take it and be like, okay, you know, that's your religion. That's you connecting with your ancestors, instead of thinking, oh my gosh, you're going to put something on me when you get mad at me. Oh, or just being like, hey, you know, I don't like that voodoo stuff. That's not something I feel like we should say to people because that is their religion. That's how they connect with their ancestors. And that's the end of my speech. Thank you.